Chimaev. Who do you want to see him fight? Not a dream fight. I don't want to read the comments and see Kamaru Usman, right? I want to see him fight Kamaru Usman too. I want to see him fight Colby Covington too. I want an answer of who you want to see him fight in conjunction with, very realistically, who do you believe he's going to fight? And I'm at a little bit of loss on Chimaev. From what I'm being told is there isn't a 70-pounder out there that will fight him. Dana White said as much. Dana then got reminded of Neil Magny. And Dana amended his statement, goes, oh, wait a minute, you are right. Neil would do the fight. Neil Magny would do the fight. I got to give him that credit. Okay, but that's the same stuff we've been hearing. There was nothing new. And for some reason, Magny's not getting that match. And the best thing about Chimaev isn't just the hype. It's not just his performances or his interviews. It was the experiment of running him out there so often, back to back, anyone, anywhere, anytime, old school, bouncing in between weight classes. Guys, I would love to know your answers. I would really like to know who you want to see Chimaev fight in conjunction with, who do you believe can get the fight. But I would then like to submit for you, if they're holding something from us, if Dana's got a little venue picked out, maybe some of the politics and a geographical location is in mind, and he's working on a specific opponent, okay, fine. If he's already got the fight done, he's just not ready to reveal it and tell us, okay, fine. But if he doesn't, if there's not something more happening than what's already been disclosed to us, are we looking at the wrong weight class? What is to say that Chimaev is a 170-pounder? Well, Chael, he did 2 of his fights at 170. Okay, what's to say he's not an 85-pounder? Because I'm going to smear that right back in your face and say he did equal as many 2 fights at 185 pounds. Why have we decided that he's a welterweight? And if it is true that nobody will fight him at welterweight aside from Neil Magny, because even if they fight, it's one time and you're right back in the same position, why are we looking at the wrong weight class? It's a very simple question. It's a very basic question. I'm not here to trick anybody. But if we're done with the Chimaev experiment, which is running him from 70 to 85 and back down to 70, if we're going to start to zone and lock in, start to get a ranking, start to get a meaningful run towards the title, if that's what we're going to do we have to do it at 170? And I've asked you guys this question before, but everybody believes he's a 70-pounder, and everybody that gets asked about Chimaev is a 70-pounder. And every time they talk about him going after a belt, they bring up Usman. I don't hear any 85-pounders turning him down. I don't ever hear talk about Chimaev versus Adesanya. And I would have to remind you, he's done 4 fights, 2 in each weight class. So why have we decided that he's a 70-pounder? And it doesn't look as though I'm going to get my way. And I had somebody try to answer this. Somebody tried to answer this for me and say, Chael, it's a longer-term play with Chimaev. He is the first guy who reasonably could be expected to possibly be champ. And it's very important that he goes in order, that he goes from 70, decides to let his body grow, gets to 85, decides to let his body grow into 205 pounds. I hear what they're saying. I don't know how much I believe that. I do hear what they're saying. But if Henry beats him to the punch and Cejudo pops up to 145, I mean, you see where things get a little bit weird. I don't really know that anybody's mind works that way. And anytime we're trying to guess a fight, anytime we're trying to guess anything that the UFC does, we will call that who's going to fight who and what does the UFC want to do. What we're really saying is, if you could get in Dana's mind, what do you think Dana's going to do? And I do not buy the idea that Dana has a long-term plan to make this guy a champ. I just don't. I don't think that's even crossed Dana's mind. Dana got asked about the first champ thing at 170 pounds and said, we're 4 fights away from him even being given the opportunity. So I don't buy that that's where the boss's mind is at. But if the information that we're giving is the only information, there is no plan already, there's no deal that's done and just hasn't been announced, are we looking in the wrong direction? Are we looking at the wrong weight class? And it would seem as though if you were a 185-pounder who didn't want to fight Chimaev, you're a 185-pounder and you see some real problems with that guy, you see some real skills with that guy, it would seem as though you have open territory to go get the headlines, to be the Neil Magny, the bravest guy in the room, but do it at your weight class. It would seem as though you're very protected. I had a guy who used to call me out. I was good for headlines. If you called me out, I was going to accept and I was going to come after you. And as long as you could live with the bumps, as long as you could take the bruises, it was a very smart thing to do. This guy was within my weight class, though, and he was terrified of me. I'm going to keep his name out of it. He was terrified of me. And every single time, he would never say my name. He would never, ever do that when I was available. But as soon as an announcement came that I signed to fight somebody else, this guy would speak up. He'd be coming after me. He'd be coming at me with everything he got. And then when he had a fight, let's say I didn't have a fight, but he had a signed contract, he would come out with everything he got. He'd never talk about his opponent. It would always come to me. And I always appreciated what he was doing. I got him a lot of headlines that way. He got himself a lot of attention that way. And I only offer you that because I lived through it. I observed it. It worked pretty well. And it would just seem that a 185-pounder has a major opportunity right now to speak up. Say, hey, man, we're not all scared. Maybe those guys at 170 are. Why don't you send them up here, particularly if you don't think they're going to? It's a great opportunity. There's something that can be done with Chimaev. If you say Chimaev's name, he's going to say yours. Nobody's getting away. Nobody's getting a free shot at him. Just not going to happen. He's built differently. Not to mention it goes against the character. His character's got to be raw team rules. Anyone, anywhere, anytime. I think if you're an 85-pounder and you're not calling out Chimaev, if you're not putting a spotlight right in his face, if you're not bringing to the world's forefront that you aren't scared of him, all he has to do is come up and sign a contract, I think you're missing a very obvious opportunity.